In my experience, a good story often starts with a mistake, but when you tell a story that has a whole series of mistakes, like real doozies, does that make a great story? I don't know. We're going to find out when you hear all about some of my least flattering moments. Pair that with a very special interview with international jazz singer, urban homesteader, and dear, dear friend, Diva in the Dirt, Maureen Washington. We ought to have some fun today on the sTEaD Talks podcast, episode 2.
Well, let me tell you, this city's bustle, I'm letting go. Packing up dreams of midnight also. Step into the flow, yeah. Mics are hot on sTEaD Talks wave, sharing a grand plan, it's a rave and crave. Taking all I got, it's a sell-off mode. Moving to them woods is my new abode. Oh, the horns take the stage with a sharp refrain, telling my tale with a swinging game.
Right. All right. So not only did we overcome the craziness of the schedule to be able to record this, but we did it twice.
Hey.
Because the first time the audio was terrible, and for a podcast, it's like the worst possible outcome. High five. Super team.
Super team.
Super team making it
Super
happen.
team. Yeah. Sorry, I have coffee still.
Yeah.
If you want some, I'll share.
I'll take you up on that.
All right. All right. Yeah. You know, the best part is that this is one of the most tumultuous times, and we're going to do it again.
Maybe we can tell the story with a little less of the frustration, make it a little more fun, because in hindsight, it's like what led us to this lifestyle, you know?
Which huge point that you made. It made me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Oh, I'm glad.
I'm like, oh, I guess that stuff didn't ruin my life.
Well, when you get into the story too, I'm glad that you've changed your mind on that, because most of it was my fault. So
Thank you.
You know, and so I don't want to be responsible for having ruined your life. You know? And so,
hey, we climbed out of it.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Today we're talking about like what sort of events could lead a nice young urban professional couple, yuppies, to becoming full-on mountain people. But we're also getting another viewpoint from Maureen Washington, Diva in the Dirt, international jazz singer and urban homesteader, what led her to being a full-on jazz singer, and then, going from being a diva on the stage to a diva in the dirt, which ought to be fun. So we'll tell a little bit of this story, we'll tell a little bit of that story, tell a little bit of this story, go back and forth. We're going to mix it up. It should be fun. Yep. Yeah. I figure we'll just start where we ended off before. We had gotten married. That was a crazy experience. Like I said before, I dropped the ring a bunch of times. I was super nervous. I could barely get my words out, which, have you ever seen me that at a loss for words?
No.
Yeah, before or since, right?
I was laughing at you on the inside, just to let you know.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, he's so nervous. I'm confused, and also it's a little endearing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you took it that way. So we found out like 2 hours beforehand, or decided 2 hours beforehand, that we were going to get married that night. And so we called our parents. None of them could make it. And so we essentially stay-loped.
Yep.
We didn't elope. We stay-loped.
We stay-loped. We were like, oh, don't worry. This is the formality. This is the formality, and we'll have another one.
Yeah, we'll have a ceremony.
We'll have a ceremony, and we'll invite everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember that ceremony like it was yesterday.
Oh, wait.
We never really did that. Figure I'll start with how this whole move to the desert happened.
Yeah. Oh, and I just want to interject. So our first, I think it was about 3 years together, we worked in the same office, and things were delightful.
Yeah.
And then we sort of changed our I don't know, we wanted to work somewhere else and have a new experience.
Yeah.
Take it from there. Go for it.
Going from a door-to-door sales environment, I was like, I could be a handyman, watch some videos on it. So, of course, that made me an expert. And
Yeah, YouTube 2008, man.
yeah, they really had the good stuff there. And I remember being in Santa Barbara remember that van that I had, which I was always surprised would start in the morning?
Oh, wow, yeah.
Like it was like a 1979 Chevy van.
Huh.
It was all beat to hell.
Wow.
Yeah.
I barely remember it.
Yeah, rusted holes. I think it only ran for me for a few months. But that was my work van. I was going to be a handyman. I needed a van. So I remember being up in Santa Barbara doing a drywall job and being super frustrated because none of the videos that I had found on YouTube on how to do this particular function of drywall didn't actually show you how to do it. Although, the title and the thumbnail would lead you to believe that. So I was very frustrated. I was like, you know what? I could just figure this out. It's not that big of a deal. It's basically rubbing mud, on top of sticks. And so our species has been doing this for like 10,000 years at least. To be able to, it should be ingrained, right? It was just the most frustrating day I think I had doing this new adventure. And I remember finishing for the day, walking out to this old, rusty, beat-up van and seeing a flat tire. And so I sat in the front seat of the van thinking about what I was going to do. And I get this call from this guy that I used to know from the company I was working at. And he's like, hey, I know you can sell like crazy. I need someone to run all of my sales and marketing. And I was like, okay, where are you still up in Ojai? He's like, no, we're out in Las Vegas now. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, let's talk about it. I'll talk to Carrie and see what she thinks. And so I come home and I tell you this whole thing happened. And it was going to be good pay in a cheaper place to live. And we'd get to party as much as we wanted to in Vegas, right? So all of those things, and see all the Cirque du Soleil shows and, comedy routines. And probably my favorite prospect of moving to Las Vegas was buffets and $3.99 steak and eggs. So, I mean,
They were good.
Yeah. So when I came home, told you about this, what'd you think?
Oh, I thought, that sounds an executive position right off the bat,
Yeah.
like walking in the door. That sounds pretty awesome. Yeah, there wasn't like a future, this. I was
Like
doing
the plan wasn't laid out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was taking tax classes at the time at an H&R Block so I could be a certified tax person
Yeah.
and work in that office down the street from us. And I figured, well, I'll finish this up and do that out in Las Vegas. But I was also cleaning houses with my mom, like in between also doing
Yeah.
junkets, doing the sound
That's right.
and stuff as that, like, they had just sold their company. So
Yeah.
there was no longer doing the sound work, like, basically was over. So doing the houses with my mom was really nice. But I thought, this is an opportunity for us that I think we should jump on.
Yeah. We took a trip out there. We talked to the owner of the company, showed us around. Can't remember if we went and saw a show or something. We did something while we were out there, but we also got on Craigslist, looked at a house that we could rent, talked to the guy, and he's like, yeah, okay, great, And so all of that was set up, and I went out, it was like 3 weeks to a month before you, and got everything set up. We packed everything that I was going to take with me. So I remember my first day working, I got up real early and was getting ready, and I thought to myself, like, I should make a splash. I should make a splash on this first day. I remember the owner of the company talking about one of the employees had loaned the company a bunch of money when he got an inheritance. Ever since he made that loan to the company, he just basically would come into work, not do any work, and get paid, right? Thinking to myself, I wonder if I could handle that problem. So I called the guy up and I was like, hey, meet me for breakfast. And he's like, sure. And so we meet for breakfast and I talked to him about it, and I find out that he'd like to actually start his own company. He doesn't want to work for the company anymore. He'd like to start his own company. He's always been really into this one product that the company sold. Well, I knew that the owner of the company wanted to get rid of that product. He didn't want to carry it anymore because they were going in a different direction.
Right.
And so I worked out a deal with him where he forgave the loan, but got that product and the licensing, the full licensing for that product, and got him to invest another $25,000 in the company, because that was part of my job as well, was going to be raising investment income or investment money. After the breakfast, and I literally typed out a contract. We had a form contract for the investment, but I typed out a contract for the rest of it, and and got it all signed and had like a whole deal package put together. And we finished the breakfast. I look at my phone and I have like 15 missed calls, and they're all from the owner, because I'm like an hour and a half late on my first day, right? And I get to the office and he's like, I can't believe you'd be an hour and a half late on your first day. And I was like, yeah, I was doing something actually work related. And he's like, you don't know anything about the company? I was like, yeah, check it out. And he reads through it. He's like, oh my gosh. And he like gives me a high five. He's like so happy. Oh my, this solves such a big problem, and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And that was my first day at the job. I was like basically setting myself up to be a superstar here, right? And so quietly, I'd always had this viewpoint that, my dad passed away when he was 36 years old. I had quite a past, and not really taking care of myself all that much. And I basically had this viewpoint that I was either going to be a multimillionaire by the time I was 30, or I was going to be in the ground somewhere. And those were really the only two options that I kind of saw in my future. So I just kind of operated that way. It's like if I thought that this was going to be something that moved me closer to the being a multimillionaire, then I'd just go for it. And that was kind of like that was my MO. So you get out there, and what do we do with our time? We've got this nice little house in a cul-de-sac. We're friends with all the neighbors, or we make friends with all the neighbors.
Yeah. I mean, do what anyone does when you get to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And you get served free drinks, and you walk along the strip, and you see all the, the glitz and the glamour of all of the.
Yeah. Stand outside the Bellagio, watch the fountains go off while listening to Sarah Brightman.
I know.
Opera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wore a suit every day.
You did.
Jacket,
you look
shirt,
good.
tie.
You look real sharp. I wore nice things with my cute little shoes, and always had my hair done, and my makeup.
Yeah, so we're thinking.
We were like.
Yeah.
We were executives.
Yeah.
And I worked there too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, I thought it was pretty well plotted out. Like, yeah, we're going to do this. We have stock options in the company. When it goes public, we're going to be multimillionaires. Now it's just got to put all of my effort into making sure it happens before I'm 30. Otherwise, I'm going to miss my target, and then I'll end up being,
this is a hilarious point, because we hadn't really worked in like the real world. So the amount that we were offered for us both to work there was an unbelievably low amount.
By comparison to the rest of the world, but we were like, that's double what we've ever made.
Yeah, we're like, wow, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And
you made really good commissions on stuff that we managed to spend within 2 days every single time. So
yeah.
It was good stuff.
Yeah.
Brought us whole family
Well,
out,
when you're saving lots of money on
crazy.
steak and eggs, you have a lot of income to go to auctions and that kind of stuff. And we buy like furniture and mirrors and stuff, some of which we still have, some of which we don't. We're coming home from work one day, and you are being not your normal supportive. It's like everything I say, you've got like, well, blah, and I'm like, there's something up. There's something up, okay? And we get about halfway home, or drives about 20 minutes, and you're like nagging at me, and it's not something I'm used to, because you never do that, you know. It's like not a thing that's in your character, and I'm just like, I get to like a boiling point, and I'm like, something's up. I think I make some kind of crack, or you make some kind of crack. I think it was me, about, I'm gonna get you a pregnancy test. Like, what's your deal?
And I was like, maybe you should.
Yeah, so I just like grabbed the wheel and ran, pulled it to the right from the left-hand lane. There was nobody behind me, but it allowed me to kind of launch right into the CVS parking lot and come to a halt. And I jump out of the car, go inside, get you a pregnancy test, get back in the car, and I hand it to you. There was not another word until we got home, but I remember you getting out of the car in kind of a huff and beating me to the door. And so I get out and I come out behind you, and you like walk into the bathroom, you do your thing with the pregnancy test, and you come out, and the look on your face is like, I'm pregnant. And my response, which I think is probably the best response, or at least the most not appropriate response, was, I knew it. And then I realized, you're pregnant. Right? And we give each other big hugs, and we're like, oh my gosh, so excited, and everything else. And, it's like the idyllic, perfect story, young couple gets together, finds some success, gets pregnant.
Now, we've been trying for 4 years. So this was like,
Yeah.
wow, it finally happened.
Yeah.
I do remember being like, but we just got to Las Vegas.
Yeah. We
Like,
just,
no more drinks, no more like, well, that was about it.
yeah.
It wasn't a huge thing, but of course it was awesome.
Yeah. So you start doing all the first baby research, and what do you find?
So in Las Vegas, they have, their hospitals have one of the world, or at least at the time, one of the United States' worst or highest mortality rates in childbirth across the country. So I was like, whoa, what are other options that we can look at? Because that is horrible. So I'm like, oh my gosh, we could have a midwife. So I like do research, and I call, and we meet with a midwife that we ended up like hiring, and she was just incredible.
You know what my favorite part about her? April, right? My favorite part about her from the beginning was that she was a small, redheaded lady. Like, she was about our age, and her name was April, and I was a huge fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I think that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I think that's hilarious. I think I would have thought that was funny if you'd have mentioned that.
I didn't mention it because I was like, I don't want to shake your confidence, or anything else like that. I was doing the eggshell thing. I didn't know what to expect. That car drive home showed me a different side of you. And,
That's too funny.
and I was like, but, what about when we get into the first half of the pregnancy? Like, so I was like on guard.
Yeah, and from there it just, that part of everything went very well.
You had some very particular cravings.
Every day.
Every day. Yeah, what was the craving?
For so long was
It was like
In-N-Out,
8 months of the pregnancy.
In-N-Out burger.
Yeah.
I get it. Animal protein style, and I would leave work. I'd be like, why aren't they open until 11? And I would be so mad. And I'd be like waiting in their drive-thru or the parking lot, like, and then I'd pull up immediately when they, and boy, did I gain quite a lot of weight, like 80, 90 pounds. It may have been more. I just stopped, keeping track in my head. And I was just like, I don't want to remember this.
Yeah. All I want is double, animal protein style. That's what I want. And I remember bringing it up at one point.
It was the healthiest
Yeah.
fast food choice.
Yeah.
And we were working every day.
And you showed me like a whole chart
I did.
of
I
like
did all
the
kinds of
calories
research
and all this other stuff.
into the company. So I
Yeah.
know a lot about in and out.
So that all happened. And we were also practicing, we were going to classes on the Bradley method.
Oh, that's right.
The husband coached pregnancy or the husband coached childbirth, right? I just remember baby box. Yeah. This is relaxation. This is relaxation. I remember like doing all the drills and everything. Are you relaxed? This is relaxation. Go Bradley method.
Yeah.
We're going for a little while, and she was due in October, and at like somewhere about a day, 2 days before her due date, I get called into the office, to my boss's office, and he's got one of the other vice presidents and his son in there. And he basically just tells me, listen, there's no way you can take any time off. See, I had saved up my 2 weeks vacation, which I had earned. I was just like blown away that he would even suggest this. I was like, yeah, that's ridiculous. You're gonna give me my 2 weeks. We don't have any family out here. We don't have any like close friends. I'm gonna take care of my wife. Like, that's happening. And we already have an agreement. I told you about this 6 months ago, you know, like,
Surprise, we're having a baby tomorrow.
yeah, it was not like,
Yeah, the guy was a piece of work.
he was a real piece of work. But
Yeah.
anyway, he goes on to tell me, like, when we were pregnant with our first son, who he points to because he's in the room, I was getting my Juris Doctor degree, becoming a lawyer at Princeton. And there was no way that I would just be able to, no, Pepperdine. Yeah, it was Pepperdine. And there was no way I'd be able to take 2 weeks off. So I took, you know, he was born, I took the next day off, and then I was back in school. And I was like, yeah, but your kids hate you. You've been divorced 3 times. Your kids don't like you. Why would I ever take advice from you on how to do that part of life, right? And he's like, well, I would just hate to see anything bad happen to your family. And he was talking about me losing the job, but I took it as a threat. Like he was threatening me with losing the job. So I tell him, I have a superpower I've never told you about. He's like, yeah, what's that? I said, well, I have the ability to walk out of a door and never think about you ever again. You won't even exist in my world. Right? And I don't want to show that to you because I think we have a good thing going. And we're talking about 2 weeks off, and I know you can't afford to lose me. So I'm going to walk into my office. I'm going to gather up my tchotchkes and my knickknacks. I'm going to put them in a box. By the time I'm done with that, I'm going to walk back into your office, and I hope that you will have changed your mind. He was trying to call my bluff, and he didn't realize I wasn't bluffing. Like, this was... Like, I could just walk away. It wouldn't bother me at all. So I go and I pack up all my stuff. I walk back in. I was like, change your mind? He's like, nope, but I'm sure I'm going to see you in 2 days. And I was like, no, you're not. Like, this is it. I walk out and I call you and tell you what happened. And what was your response?
Well, I was actually relieved.
Yeah.
Because I started working from home after 6 months into the pregnancy. And then, 8 months, I was like, okay, I'm like maternity leave. So, it was a very stressful environment. It was not well operated or managed. And the thing that really broke the camel's back for me was when one of the other employees that I trained was then making more than the two of us combined.
Yeah.
When you've brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars to the company.
Several million, actually, by that point. Yeah.
So I was like, good. Like, screw them.
Yeah.
Let's move on with our life.
I was fully convinced that no matter what I tried to do, I was going to be successful at it, right?
I was behind you on
the
that.
scales were tipping in the direction of multimillionaire before 30 and less in the direction of the other thing that I described earlier.
Yeah, and this is
the dirt nap.
the day before Brooklyn was due.
This is the day before Brooklyn was due, right? And so yet another example of people who experience something and they're like, and just change and act, right? They decide and act, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that was that was us. So the very next day, we go into into April's office, and we tell her, "Hey, I got to fire my boss today." And she's like, "Oh, you're like due any minute now." I was like, "Yeah, it's gonna be fine. I got other opportunities and all this other stuff, and everything's gonna be fine." She's like, "Okay." And so we go home, and then about 4 o'clock that night, you're like, I think I'm in labor. I think I'm in labor. Maybe we should call." We called, and April's like, "Well, like, let me know when it starts getting a little more intense." And so about an hour goes by, and you're like, "No, I'm definitely in labor." Like, I think did your water break at that point?
I was in a bath. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we did call the doula.
Yeah.
A friend that we met at the Bradley class, and
Oh, yeah.
so then she
She was a
came
doula
over.
in training, Kristen.
That's right.
Yeah,
yep.
that's right.
Yeah, she was awesome.
Yeah.
So then she was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
you're definitely in labor."
Yeah.
So like 4 PM, you make whatever calls to whomever, because I'm just like, la da 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 da.
Yeah.
Really. I'm just kind of like.
You're
laying
like
down.
walking around,
Just laying down.
doing some
walking around.
crawling. Remember, you were doing some crawling, and I was like, "Oh, it looks
Like
so uncomfortable," because we had
stretches.
all tile in the house.
I think it wasn't there like a little area rug carpet thing by the.
Maybe there was.
Maybe
Yeah.
There wasn't. I don't remember.
Yeah. All I know is that when we lived in that house, we attempted P90X, and I remember it being really difficult to do extreme yoga because of the tile. Yeah, and only because of the tile,
Of
not
course,
not
no,
because of
it's
any
the
other
tile.
reason.
It's the
It was
tile.
just the tile.
That's funny.
About 9 o'clock comes, and you're like full on in labor, going full on. I call April, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'll get over there." But the doula's there, Kristen's there. We're doing
Yeah.
we're doing okay. So anyway, by 10 o'clock that night, so you went into labor at 4 o'clock, or your first like feeling of like,
Yeah, like this is probably what's happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
And were you like, "Man, it's Braxton Hicks," or were you kind of going
yeah.
back and forth
Yeah,
on
at
it?
first, because it wasn't the first time I felt that, but then that it wasn't like going away, and I think it was, well, if it continues and they get closer, then
Yeah.
Then we'll be a little more ready.
Yeah. And we had the pool all set up for the water birth and the
Yeah.
delivery. It was all nice and heated,
It
and
was terrific.
it was amazing, right? And so her assistant midwife is like, "Oh yeah, she needs to get here." Well, April was delivering another baby and had been in like a 36-hour labor with this other baby. So she finishes up, jets over, and I remember it like her running in the front door in slow motion and like diving with her arms into the pool to catch Brooklyn. It may not be how it happened, but it was like within a few minutes of her getting there.
It was so fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, 6 hours, and boom, there she was.
Yeah,
Brooklyn.
ready to go.
Yeah.
Little Brooklyn girl.
Little Brooklyn, healthy, beautiful, wonderful experience.
Yeah, boogie down Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brooklyn had just been born. It was a beautiful experience. Life was amazing. I'd gotten out of this toxic work environment, which was changing me for the worse. It was turning me into this like only interested in money, get the deal kind of a guy, which I never wanted to be. I never wanted to be that guy. And so I was kind of sitting there with the decision. I got this beautiful baby. I have my lovely and amazing and talented and beautiful wife. How am I going to take care of them in Las Vegas without having this job? Nice house and all that other stuff. And I come up with a plan, and I decide that the way that I'm going to make that target of becoming a multimillionaire before age of 30 is I was going to become a professional poker player. And that went in a way that we'll talk about after we connect up with Maureen Washington, Diva in the Dirt, who I am super, super excited to talk to you about. But stay tuned so we can get back to this, because the whole poker playing thing was, that was an adventure.
If you tuned in, you might recall that vibe. sTEaD Talks Podcast. lights in their eyes. Rock the city in '08, life was looking fine. Had a good gig, a sweet crib, everything divine. Yeah, yeah. But life's a gamble on the flip side.
Diva in the Dirt, Maureen Washington, how you doing?
I am doing very well tonight. How are you, Jason and Carrie?
Oh, we're doing fabulous. We're just like telling stories on the podcast and letting people get to know us. And we thought it would be a great idea to kind of do the same thing with all of our friends and have people come on and get to know them better outside of the context of homesteading. Although, you know, you grew 1,500 pounds of food for yourself last year on a quarter acre. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know,
It is amazing. And you know, like it's not just a quarter acre, it's a quarter acre city lot with buildings and things on it.
Right.
So
that's
it's
right.
even-
So your
it's
garden's
even
not a
less.
quarter acre.
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even think
No,
about
because
that.
there's a house and there's a 400 square foot studio. There's a driveway. There's sidewalks. There's a shed.
You're putting me completely to shame. Like just like 1,500 pounds of food. Like,
If you feel shame, imagine how I feel.
well, let's do something about that.
I am.
You got 120
Sugar beets,
120 or 160?
20.
Ooh.
120 sugar beets
Sugar
in the
beet,
ground.
yeah.
And they're like bubbling up. And they'll
That's
get heavy.
fantastic.
They'll get heavy.
Yes, they
And
will.
they're like-
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. The key is to grow lots of squash because they weigh lots.
Yeah,
There
I
we
like it.
go.
And pumpkins, gourds
Yes.
of various sizes
Yes,
and shapes.
yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah. 2 years ago, my biggest pumpkin was 63 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That year, I only grew 700 pounds of food.
Wow.
So I doubled it last year. So 2
That's-
years ago, it was 7. Each year, I seem to increase it almost by doubling it.
Well, that's very well done.
Wow.
Thank you.
Very well done. The whole urban homesteader like thing, like people actually taking homestead concepts and applying them in the middle of cities, because you have chickens and you have all kinds of stuff going.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that to be amazing, and it's exactly what we as a society actually need. Is
Yes.
we need people that can take care of themselves, because
Yes.
a society of people who are not dependent upon society for their survival is going to be
Yes.
way more powerful. They're going to be way more capable. And I just appreciate you for doing your part on that.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. And yeah, and it is, you know, like I have this huge front boulevard. I don't know what the square footage of it is, but it was just weeds. And the city, the township that I live in, I got the honor of mowing it all summer long. And then I turned it into a garden, and I've just done little bits and pieces, things that can be removed in case, the neighborhood goes, we don't like that. And then when the wood chips came, I thought, I'd always like, is someone going to say something? But everybody that walks by is always, wow, this is amazing. I look forward to seeing what the garden is going to look like through the summer. And it is a huge statement, this is a statement saying you can grow your food even though you live in this neighborhood. You can grow something more. And so it is, would I like to be out on a property? Absolutely. But that's not viable for me at this time. So it's like, I look at this as my, this is my teaching ground because I knew nothing about growing 4 years ago. I grew a little bit when my kids were younger, here and there, but never to the extent of, growing from seed and harvesting it and then preserving it and all those things. So,
Yeah.
So it's like taking it at that next step farther.
Well, that's very
So
well
cool.
done. Very, very cool.
Thanks.
Okay, so you grow like metric tons of food for yourself in a very small area. You got chickens; they're laying eggs for you. You're making your own fertilizers and all of these things. You're basically doing all of the homestead things, and that's all amazing. But I also heard you could sing some jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Blue moon.
Oh, nice.
You saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Oh,
Love it.
yeah. I want to kind of take this conversation in a direction that will ultimately lead to how you went from just singing jazz to being the diva in the dirt. But let's take it back a little further. And how did you get into that? Have you just been one of those kids that was singing all the time? And
Pretty much.
yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. When I was a teenager, my goal, like my one dream was I wanted to be a professional singer and I wanted to be a mom of a lot of kids. And I figured I wouldn't get either of those things. And then, the older you get, you realize, the music business is very difficult to get into. And I grew up in a very small, rural type of, it's not rural, but compared to big cities, we had, I think growing up, it was 71,000, or maybe when I was an adult, it was 81,000 people lived in our city. We were a hub, it was the bigger city for all the smaller towns to, do their commerce into and that. So again, it wasn't something where I thought that I'd be able to become a professional singer. I did go to school. When I graduated, I went to college. I lasted 4 months.
Sounds like me.
And that's and that's another story that's all different into itself.
Well,
And by the time I think I got married. I was married at 20, and had my first child at 21, and then had the fifth one at 28. So I had my kids very close together because that was another important thing.
mhm.
I'm the youngest of 5, and the first 4, they were one group, and then there was a 4-year gap, and I grew up so I'm an only child with siblings, realize what it's like.
Yeah.
And it is I only had 1 year of elementary school with my sister where they were a group, they were a pack. Well, and so everybody knew who the Washingtons were.
Mhm.
And then here comes me many years later kind of thing. And so, I will say by the time I was 22, I wasn't able to sing anymore. I had shut myself completely off from singing, blah, blah, blah. And, but I had all these babies. And so I would sing to my kids. And also I was a homeschooler. So I homeschooled, and, so I had this kind of, and I did want at that time as a homeschooler, it was I so want the urban life or the farm life, but it was oh, there's a lot of work that is involved with that. You are so not that kind of person, which no, I wasn't back then. And then I got involved with a direct sales company. And that's kind of what opened me back up, because I was shut down. I wasn't able to, speak publicly. I can't even say the word publicly.
Mhm.
And I wasn't able to sing, anymore in front of people. It was just, I would get too emotional. And it was that company with me standing up in front of people, trying to sell my wares,
Mhm.
that it became this comedic routine. It wasn't that I was a real good salesperson, because I would never look at someone and say, hey, you're going to buy that? Well, you should buy this too, because they go together. Because I don't know what people's budgets are, and I'm not about to intrude in that.
Mhm.
But I digress. And it was with that company that their mandate was about helping people use their God-given talents to better themselves. And that's basically what this company did, unbeknownst to them. And I did start singing, and then I basically became a folk singer, so I was, trying to learn Tracy Chapman songs and singing in coffee shops a little bit. And then I sort of got involved with an accompanist, a pianist, and I just play in the lounges around my town. And then this, person approached me and said, hey, we got this jazz band, and we're doing this big project with the symphony in the town. And so would you come and sing a song? And I said, sure. So I went and rehearsed with them, and just the jazz band. And they said, good, you're hired. And I said, okay, when is the gig? No, you're hired to front the band. They didn't even, I was like, no. I was coming to sing a song with you and the symphony. No, front the band.
Yeah.
And my crazy entrepreneurial self just all of a sudden, bang, 6 weeks later, I had a great gig for this band. And then it just snowballed. For a year and a half, we were like just an amazing, we were kind of funkified. Urban jazz is what we called it. And it was, so we did all the R&B, the funk, the jazz. And they, I think almost every single musician, except for the bass player and myself. So we had, with trumpet, sax, guitar, keys, the drums, bass, I think I might have not said, but everybody was educated in music. Like they'd done post-secondary music, just the bass player and I. And we'd both sit over to the side and go, hopefully they won't find out that we don't know what they're talking about when they're saying C7, flat 5, 3, 2, 5, just like, because if they find out,
let's try it syncopated.
Sure, whatever that, and so that was that, but it didn't matter that I didn't have jazz language down. It's just that it was just innate in me, to sing. And then my guitar player, he was in my hometown because his wife was doing her medical practicum, and they were leaving. It was a year and a half, and so he said, come with me, and we will start a band on the island. We'll do the same thing that we're doing here. And I went, are you kidding? I have 5 kids and a mortgage. And he left in March, and he'd call me up and say, so when you moving down? I said, not moving down. I got 5 kids and a mortgage. No. Yeah. Yeah. And
none of those situations have changed yet.
And then by July, I sold my house, and August 6th, I was here on the island. And I'd only been to the island, kind of once with my high school choir band and choir. And the second time we passed through going over to Salt Spring Island back in 86, we hit Expo 86 and whatever. And then we went to go visit some people on Salt Spring. And so my experience, I didn't know this place at all. And Vancouver, I know, Vancouver Island. And we arrived, and the first night we were just, again, my guitar player with his family, we just all were hunkered down in his basement. And I laid down, and then all of a sudden I sat straight up and went, oh, what did I just do? I just sold my house and moved my entire family, And my husband just rubbed my back, I'm hyperventilating. And anyway, so I know it is a big long way around it, but it's so I, Daniel Cook and I, we'd write some music together, and we would do the odd little kind of duo thing. But then he kind of he said, hey, call this guy, and see if he'll do duos with you, and call this person. And so I did. And then I was going to do a little EP. I got a bit of money, a grant money to do an EP. And so I'd already met a few musicians. So it was like, okay, I'll take that bass player. I'll take that person there and that person. And then the pianist that was supposed to be on it, I knew him. I'd met him. He became not unavailable. So he gave me 3 names. And I don't even remember the other 2 names, but the first name was Carl Rusing. He said, give him a call. So I called this man, Carl Rusing, and I said, hi, my name's Maureen Washington, and I'm doing this EP. Would you like to be on it? And he said, sure. And he went, oh, he doesn't know if I'm a crazy person. He doesn't know anything about me. And he just agreed. And so then I went and Googled Carl Rusing. And then I peed my pants because he's a film and television composer. Oh, wow. He has done music for the Bob Newhart show. He's like, it was like, I'm like, I can't hire this guy. He's really good. He's a real professional. And anyway, he came and did the recording. And then a year later, he and I started doing duos, and we went and did another recording the following year together, just in his studio. And, and that's been since 2010. So for 14 years, he has been one of my huge mainstays as a bandmate, musician friend, and tours so with me and stuff.
That's awesome.
So cool.
Yeah, and it's like, and I did in 2010. I did try to go to music school again because that's what I was doing the first time, and I thought I'll go get my degree so then I can teach at the college here, because I'm going, my age is coming up, and pretty soon you're going to, not be somebody that can perform as much. But I was like, at that time I was doing for our city, like we're 350,000 people in the greater trading community for down here. And I was doing between 80 and 100 shows a year, mostly local. Wow. And it's like, if you're a drummer, that's not that, like drummers are like, 200-300 gigs a year. But for a singer to have that many gigs, the most I did was 99. Didn't get that last 100. Yeah, it was impressive. Like it was, and I wasn't like, well, of course you want me. Like I'm always going, I hope they don't find out that I don't know anything about music. But I learned along the way. I did do this 1 year of college, but at the year of doing the college, I was actually releasing 2 albums. So I would be in class with my cell phone, proofing, photos for the poster, photos for the album cover. Yes,
that's amazing.
And that was so it was where I had to kind of draw the line. And I went, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to put everything into doing music, working hard. I did most of the gigs though were lounge work. So just to preface that, those 100 gigs. So it's not like it's great pay, oh, good. I can go and buy some eggs, butter, and some cheese. It's not super great money.
I don't know if you've been to the grocery store recently, but you would have had to have been paid a king's ransom to be able to afford those things that you just described. Yeah. I don't even know what those things look like from the store anymore.
That's right. So now in this day and age, right now, it would let me buy, a small container of milk. Thank you.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. I'm getting a picture.
That's right. And so I was doing the lounge work, but in the lounge work, I'd get private gigs, and I would do concerts, and I would do festivals, and so those ones, that's where you're making, fairly decent money, for those gigs. And in there, I was releasing more albums and whatever. And I think I have 9 total, not all done commercially. 2005 was my first commercial one, and then I might have done 5. I probably did 4 non-commercially beforehand.
Wow.
And whatnot.
That's amazing.
Listen to those. I had no idea. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, I have 2 Christmas albums. Because Christmas, I'll tell you, anybody who is a musician, if you're a starting musician, go make yourself a Christmas album, because that album is classic, timeless, and you will make money. I cannot tell you how many downloads, how much money I've made just on, it's the one, just hear those sleigh bells jingling, ring ting tingling too. That one. Yeah, it's lovely weather for a sleigh ride. Sleigh ride. So I've made tons of money off a sleigh ride, and I've made tons of money off of walking in a winter wonderland. And that's just like, single downloads. And it's like in the middle of July, it'll be like, I'll get a little $10 check. Who's buying Christmas music in July?
I think there's a Christmas song about Christmas in July, but buying Christmas music.
Yeah. And when you're getting, and as a musician, when you're, kind of at my level, it's, you're only getting between 60 and 80 cents per download, because everybody else above you gets their little, 10 cents, 20 cents or whatever. To get $10, you go, that's a lot of downloads at 60 cents a download.
Right.
So those have been going on. And then interestingly enough, cause I'm also a vocal teacher, and that was another, that was a, I don't know what's the word I want to use for it. That was a huge growth space for me, because, I didn't feel like people like, do you teach? No. And it's like, I have a studio, right? And when I bought this house, it's got a studio in behind it, or just a building that I could use as a studio. But I felt like I needed to be Maureen Washington with a whole bunch of letters behind her name before I could offer voice to people.
Yeah.
And so it was a struggle. That's the word I want. It was a struggle for me to actually put out a shingle and say, I teach. And then once I did, and that was something that it developed. And myself as a teacher is, I teach from I teach from my own experiences and my own soul. So learning how to have breath control, learning how to hit those notes, learning how to adjust the mouth. And when I do master classes with people, I just always go, okay, the two things that you need to be a singer is you got to be able to breathe and you got to open your ding dang mouth. Because if you don't open your mouth, you're going to be pitchy and you're not going to hit those notes. So having those two things, to me, are the key.
That's what I've been doing wrong this whole time.
Open your mouth.
I wasn't going to tell him, but I'm glad you.
Yeah, and so I became a vocal teacher, and I don't know if it's my personality or it's just my whole how I am. I am not a 9-to-5 person. I cannot get up for a job at 8 and work till 5. I did do that for a couple of years. I became a bookkeeper also in there to make some extra money. Again, no skills in bookkeeping, but they were willing to pay me like $25 an hour.
Yeah. So you get on it.
Oh,
You go,
learn real fast.
Yeah.
okay.
You're in there
so-
practicing your 10 key,
I did accounting for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like it because it's, again, I think, it's as musicians, we are very math oriented. Not that, for myself, I'm not a big math person, but it's always about, getting everything down to zero. And if I got it to zero, you're like, oh, wow. It was part of the discovery and stuff like that of being able to, balance. Everything's balanced and I can go home. So I did that for just a little stint. But when I became a voice teacher, I did not want the 9-to-5. So I would teach 25 to 28 students in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
I would, start up and I would just one after another, after another, after another. But what I found was I didn't put out a shingle. Usually once a year in September, I'd go offering voice lessons. But usually the people that came to me, there was a reason. There was a specific reason why they needed to come and take a voice lesson with me. They're learning how to sing, but more importantly is that we were unlocking stuff from their past. We weren't talking about it, but just having someone in your corner, it just, I don't know, it just opens up things. Like a person would come in and they would struggle with a note and they go, I can't sing that note. And I'd look at them and, depending on their age and whatever, I go, give me some time. We're going to do that. Or if they go, I can't sing that song. As soon as they say I can't, I go, don't ever say you can't because Mama's going to help you and we're going to do it. And then when that student would achieve that goal, well, they would have the biggest cheerleader. And I get emotional when I see, especially women my age who, they might be shut down in who they are all of a sudden coming alive by music. And I'm talking when with myself, like my voice, if I'm in teacher mode, I listen to where the placement is of your voice and what's going on. I never look at a person when I'm teaching them. I said, I watch you with my ears. And so you could get a person who their voice, this would be as loud as their voice. They didn't have anything that would actually make their voice come out. And you would start hearing people where now all of a sudden that whatever happened in their past that stopped them from actually just being fully alive in who they are was being unlocked. And so that's basically, it wasn't necessarily that I do teach voice and I do teach skill and I do teach and I help people to improve, but it was unlocking who they were.
So cool.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. And I think that's probably why we get along so well. Is because of that viewpoint, right? I experience the same thing when we'll be on a live on TikTok or something, and somebody will be like, "Hey, I just bought land and I got your book and it showed me that I could do it, even though I'm not your standard person who, or whatever whatever their background was that stopped them from reaching for what they wanted." I get that same I don't go like, look at me. I go like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. If you need anything, please let me know.
That's exactly it. It isn't, it has nothing to do with me. You give so much of yourselves, of what you're doing, and you simplify it and you open up the world to so many of us where you go, there's just no way. There's just no way. And you go, there's Jason. It's like, hey, you know, I got this and this and this, and I'm going to make something out of it, and I'm going to make it work.
And it's going to solve a problem.
Yes. And so you go, oh, you mean I don't have to have $1 bazillion and I have to have all the fancy equipment? You mean I can just barter with people that might have that skill? Well, you know, it's like, and so you opening up the doors for people, it's the same sort of thing. It's just like, it's your gift and your calling, you know, to actually go, come along, everybody. If you want to come, and if you don't, that's okay. But if for those of you that want to come, you know, and people are diving into, you know, what you're creating, what you're doing.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's very rewarding. I have written up on my board here, like, you know, my board, and we won't mention it, but you know where my desk is.
Yes.
And so the walls of this particular area make a fantastic whiteboard, a big one.
Huge.
360.
You got it. Like you can just, you can write paragraphs.
Yeah. But I've written up on my board, I want to show people who struggle, who have obstacles, and who have given up that no matter the barrier, it can be overcome. And then over here it says, be the best storyteller in the homesteading niche. And over here it says, make the best videos possible. Try to help people. And that is what everything that we do is based on those goals. Like
I absolutely love that it's there in your vision, that you see it, and then you get to see it happen, and you get to experience what these goals are, you know, because you could have goals on, you know, to say, you know, it can be all kind of
make $1 million, you know.
$1 million? Is that it?
Yeah.
$1 million? Well, that won't buy you anything.
Well,
$100 million.
$1 million American dollars, you know.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you know, it's nothing to shag a stick at, but when you were teaching music, that was really how you went at it too. Like you what I always appreciated about the way that you taught music was you were teaching them a love of music. Not necessarily like what.
Yeah, it was very much that, you know, music should be fun, and you're the one doing it. Like what I would tell my students. So let's have it be something that you want to do. They got to choose their recital pieces, and we'd collaborate if it was a group performance on a song they wanted to do. But that it was first and foremost, it should be a fun, enjoyable space for them.
Absolutely.
And that I was always, you know, I just wanted to support their creativity and their ability wherever they were at. And as they improved it, it was like, you're doing so good. And then up they went until they were, you know, performing whatever it was. But it was very like, you know, it was just like,
it wasn't just to learn. It wasn't just to learn scales, you know, that is part of it. But the deeper part is strengthening the character and strengthening the love that they have, and to be able to produce that out. So,
it's so rewarding. It's such a neat thing.
It is. I think it really is.
It was super cool to see some of her students, like some of them go on to become professional singers or guitar players or
like producing
pianists.
their own stuff. One went to Carnegie Hall for a performance, like, and this was a girl that, you know, I taught her guitar and vocals, and she was already writing music when we met. And, you know, and those pitches just, you know, so we really worked on how do you find your note? You've got your instrument in your hand. So where's that note? Let's find our note, get our chord, and now match that. And then she's one of the ones that's like recording her own stuff now and like collaborating with people. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
And do you feel like a proud mama?
Oh, so very much, you know, and it's like, wow. And not like I did that, but like, wow, I was a part of their journey. And like, how cool. It's so cool.
No, it never is about, it's never about, you know, that it's that mama thing where you go, look at my little baby.
Right?
When you came, you were just, you could hardly walk and talk.
Yeah.
And now look at you.
I had to bottle feed you.
You've grown so much.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
you just feel really proud of their accomplishments,
Yeah.
and it isn't, oh, good, I get a gold star. It's like, it's like even with my own children, I don't go and say, well, good thing that I raised you to be such a decent human being.
Your accomplishments are my accomplishments. I made them happen.
Yeah.
No, again, I'm just proud of who they are and the challenges that they've overcome in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, and so you just like, I'm proud. I said, because we'll probably segue into, you don't do music that much anymore.
Hey, I'm rolling dice, I'm playing the game. Poker face tight in the life's grand game. Hey, ante is high, but I'm riding that swing. For the family love, for the cash register ring.
Man, she has an amazing voice.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah,
Yep. And just boom.
yeah.
With such.
Yep. Can't wait to hear the rest of the story, like how she went from that to what she's doing now. So back to our story. We're in Vegas. We have new baby, and I'm like dead set that the way I'm going to make this millionaire before I'm 30 target, and I'm like 29 by this point, is I'm going to go on an epic run and become a professional poker player. So the series of tournaments that comes to mind as like doing this epic run, it starts at like, I don't know, it was maybe 7 o'clock at night or so, and I went and entered a tournament at Bill's right on the strip. It was a good warm-up tournament because it was real small, it was super cheap, and I could kind of, get my math skills going. I sit down at the table, and it's like I'm just getting hit with the deck. Every single time I get dealt anything that's playable, it wins. And I'm just like, oh yeah, this is gonna be the day. And I win that tournament. It's small. I think I made like maybe $250. It was a little tournament. So then I take my winnings and I go and I enter the $80 tournament at the Riviera. And same thing, I'm just getting hit with the deck. I mean, I catch every river, and I ended up taking, I think, third in that tournament. By this time, it's like maybe, I don't know, 4 a.m. And the World Series of Poker was in town, right? And so I had looked on the schedule of events, because what a lot of people don't know about the World Series of Poker is that it's not just this $10,000 event that a bunch of people come to. There's like 50 different events. And the $1,000 Hold'em tournament was that day. So I go over to the Rio, and there's a satellite to win a ticket into the $1,000 event. And I sit down, and we grind it out for like an hour and a half. It's just a single table tournament. It's $100 buy-in, and winner gets a ticket into the 1,000. And I remember being it was down to just me and this one lady, and I bluffed her off of pocket queens, and I think I had ace king, but after the flop there was nothing there. And so I slow played the flop, and she bet. And I came over the top like 5x her bet. And she's like, then she folds. And she was down to very few chips at that point. And the next hand, she pushed all in. And we just drew it out. And I won. So I won this $1,000 ticket into the $1,000 event. And I'm like, yeah, this is going to be the most epic run ever. And I'm going all the way to the top. And this is going to be the tournament. I think first place is going to get paid like $650,000 in this tournament. It was big. There was several thousand people playing in it. So the tournament starts. We sit down at this first table, and the sound in this room was deafening. They do it in a big ballroom, right? It's not out on the casino floor, and all you hear is people, shuffling clay chips and messing with clay chips. It's just loud in this room. And so the very first hand comes out, and I'm dealt 2 red aces. And I'm like, it's in the bag. Like, this is gonna bankroll our future. I'm in there. And so I have late position, like everything is ideal. Somebody from early position bets, and the next person raises, and another person raises. And I'm just like, you know, no problem. The person just to my right pushes all in. And I'm like, all right. So I call. And we all flip over our cards, and it's like, you know, junk, pocket 9s, pocket queens. The person next to me has 2 black aces. I have 2 red aces, right? And I was like, okay, we're probably going to chop. You want to just chop it now? I mean, right. And no, let's play it out. I got sucked out on aces cracking aces in the very first hand of the tournament.
Yeah. And not only that, it would have been one ace. If it was a spade and all the others came out spades.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's what I'm saying. It was a bad beat, baby.
Oh, it was super bad.
It was a bad beat.
It was a bad beat.
So yeah. Yeah, that was poker.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought it was just going to be my skill, and I can calculate the odds of different hands really fast. And I'd read the Daniel Negreanu book and all the other books that I could get my hands on. I was like, psh, I got this in the bag. There's nobody that's going to just like walk all over me.
I think it's funny because I just think of, you know, what is it, Brunson Doyle?
Or Doyle Brunson. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
you got people playing 7-2 offsuit.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was good.
Sometimes it's just luck and draw.
Nuh-uh. It's all skill. There's no luck involved.
You know, and here's the thing is, you may be asking yourself, Carrie, what were you doing during this time?
Yeah.
Well, the irony of all of this was he quit his job so he could be home with me. But where were you the day Brooklyn was born in those 2 weeks?
I was playing the Venetian Invitational. Yeah. Like,
It's the very first time I really doubted our marriage.
yeah. Yeah. You did?
I mean, there were a couple times before that, only one
I had no
actually
doubt.
before that. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, let me just tell you this, okay? My bad. My bad.
you know what? Brooklyn loves you very much.
Yeah,
so.
she does. And turns out that when you have a past like mine, where you became a drug addict at like age 11, gambling, not the best profession to pursue. You know,
That makes sense.
it would have probably been the equivalent of me going back to school to become a chemist so that I could open my own pharmacy. Like, it went about as well as that would have gone, considering my history with the old addictive personality, which, my bad. Okay? We good?
I'll forgive you one day.
Well, luckily Brooklyn's forgiven me, so you know, I may be paying for that oversight, that guff, you know, in our relationship with one of the other children right now who will not talk to me, because I made her do chores one day. But that's a story for, it's been like 2 weeks now. Won't even say a word to me. So maybe those two things are connected.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of telling her to do chores, I should have gone and played poker. That's what I learned from the conversation we just had. But so anyway,
Stop making me doubt you.
all this is going on. Hey, love, come good or bad, we're stuck with each other at this
No.
point. Yeah. Okay? We're stuck with each other. So all that's going on. We're just barely making it. And one day, we could walk to the store from where we were. So we would go and buy some groceries. And
I like to call it our New York experience.
it was our New York experience. Yeah. We approached the house, and there is a piece of paper, blue taped, painter's taped onto the front door. What was that?
A foreclosure notice.
Yeah.
We were renting, and it turns out that the landlords were not using the rent money, which we were paying them still on time.
Yeah.
After all of that, it wasn't like so many others at that time.
And this is in 2008.
Right.
So that's when the housing market.
2009.
Yeah, 2009
Yeah.
at this point.
And they, weren't forwarding our rent over onto the mortgage payment.
Yeah, what were they doing instead?
Instead,
Yeah.
the wife was taking that and blowing it in slot machines.
Yeah.
And she worked at a casino.
Yeah, she was a pit boss.
Yeah. And
Frickin' gamblers, right? Can't live with them. Can't rent a house from them. Frickin' gamblers. That's all I have to say.
yeah. So Brooklyn's 3 months old, ish, and that became a new problem.
Yeah. So I went over to the owner's house, who lived 2 houses away from us, right? They owned both of the houses. And he gives me this whole story about how she, after work would go and just blow all the rent. And we paid it in cash, too, because I was a poker player. So we paid in cash. And so she'd take the cash and she'd put it in the slot machines and just kept blowing it. And that they were going to get a divorce, not just because of that, but partially because of that. And he's like, I don't know what to say. And I was like, well, this really sucks. This is putting us in a really bad position. And we had a little bit of money saved up, so we could figure out what we were going to do. But I remember packing everything up and us deciding we were going to find another house because you didn't want to have,
be surprised that there was, now suddenly we had, 24 hours to have to figure out what we were going to do. So I was like, let's just put a plan in place, move, be done with this, and then we won't have that concern hanging over our heads.
Yeah. And what we didn't know was at that time, there was about to be a moratorium on evictions.
Right.
Because
it's happening to everybody.
Yeah, this was like a big thing, especially in Vegas. Like, I mean, the economy in Vegas is based on tourism, and at that time nobody was doing tourist things, and so everything was crashing. There was going to be a moratorium, but we didn't want to get stuck in this whole thing, and we were also, at least me, a very prideful person. I was like, no, we're going to sort this out, and so we found a house about 3 blocks away. It was a basically brand new house, right, that was being rented. The backyard wasn't even finished. It was just all like dirt and rocks and like, but it was a really nice little house. Had a 3-car garage on it. I was really excited about that because, I mean, the possibilities would be endless that I could do with this 3-car garage. I could host.
Even have a car.
I could host. Yeah, we didn't. That's why we had our New York experience, because the car that we had was actually a company car.
And the other car, our
our
friend
WRX.
that was living in our house, kind of broke it and was.
Yeah, well, he was also supposed to be making the payments on it, and wasn't.
And all this stuff was in our garage at the house that became foreclosed, so we couldn't park the car in it, and we couldn't make the payments, so it got repoed.
Yeah.
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 No stress there.
Yeah. So anyway, three blocks down the road, we could walk.
What?
We could take handfuls of our stuff.
I can't believe how good of a mood I stayed in.
Yeah.
I cannot believe it.
You're amazing.
I'm actually more upset now than I was then. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had just said something at this point, we could have. But you know what? It wasn't our destiny.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll get there. We're going to get there. Because I actually see a circle of redemption. A circle of redemption is happening.
Around and, you know, this is by far the nicest of all places we've been.
Yeah. So anyway, we find this new house. We go down there. It's great because it's about the same price, right? It was really tight because we had to come up with first, last, and security deposit. I met the owner. He seemed like a good guy, and he drove a Rumblebee Dodge truck. And I was like, that's a pretty sweet truck. It's a V10 truck. That's pretty sweet. And so I thought we could have like common interests, you know? We move into the house. The owner of the other house is like, you know, you don't have to go. I mean, like, they're going to foreclose on the house. It's going to be. And I remember he walked up when I was sweeping out the garage because I wanted to clean everything and make it all nice and whatnot. And he's like, you don't have to do this. They're taking the house. You don't have to clean anything. It's over with. And I was like, it's a point of pride, man. Like, the bank is going to know we lived there, I think. I don't really know how any of this stuff works. And I don't want to create bad will.
Right? I was like, we have to clean this.
Yeah. Everything has to be cleaned up. And only to find out that after we left, the wife of the owner moved into the house because they were going to get a divorce and all of that stuff. And she was just going to live there for free until they finally came and took the house, now that this moratorium thing had gone in. And turns out that when she left, when she finally got evicted, she plugged all the drains, turned on all of the water, and flooded the place and just destroyed the whole, the whole house.
Yeah.
Yeah. But by this time, we're in our house, and we've been there for like a month, everything's going great. It's like air conditioning. There's, free water.
Right. I made a friend that didn't live too far that I could, walk Brooklyn in a stroller or two. And
yeah. And then we'd be walking to the store and all of that kind of stuff. And one day, it's middle of summer. It's 120 degrees outside. And the only thing that would keep houses in Vegas livable was the air conditioning, right? And we walk in, and the electricity's off. And we're like, what the heck? We think maybe it's a power outage, but the lights are on next door, power running and everything else. I'm like, gosh dang it. We must have forgot to pay the electric bill.
And it was the next day, as I recall.
I called the electric company, and we have a newborn. We need air conditioning. It's 120 degrees outside. It's not safe, right? So I call, and I'm like, try and give them my best story. And I'm always very respectful and nice to these people because I feel like if they have the ability to help us with our situation, they're gonna, if we, catch flies with honey rather than vinegar, right? And by the end of this call, I was like, you work for an evil organization who has their board meetings at the base of volcanoes wearing cloaks and masks every day. They're like, nope, you got to pay the whole thing. You got to pay, because this is so early in your account, you're going to have to pay a $500 deposit. And we're not turning it on until all of that happens. And I'm like, dang it. Well, at least the water's on, because it's included in our rent, and we're all paid up on the rent. Until the next day, when we go to take a shower, and the water's turned off. And I'm like, what the heck? I call the water company, and they're like, that house has never had a water bill before. Since it was built, there's never been an account for the water. So when they built the house, they left the water on, and the owner came and put a lock on it so that it seemed like the water was on legally, but it wasn't. Right? And there was all kinds of that kind of stuff. That was one thing I remember about Vegas is people would be like, oh, I know somebody who works for the cable company. He'll come turn it on for $20. Right. I know somebody that'll, like everybody knew somebody like that, right? So anyway, I called the owner and I was like, hey man, what the heck? The water's off. They're not gonna, you need to make this right. It's part of our lease. And I told him I'd called the water company, and they told me that they were going to charge you $10,000 because you had it turned on illegally and all this other stuff. And he's like, oh, I can't believe you did that. And he gets all mad. And the next day, we had, walked down to the store and came back, and there was another blue taped piece of paper on the frickin' door. And we're like, gosh, dang it. We walk up, and what do you find?
And it's another. And it is what I was trying to avoid getting into a new place. It was a 24-hour eviction notice.
Yeah.
So I was like, what the heck? And I don't remember even if I called them, and they're like, well, you have to come down to the court. So I went down to the courthouse and showed them the paper, and they're just like, well, it says that you signed for it. And I was like, I didn't sign anything. This was taped on my door when I came home, and she didn't believe me. I'm sure she'd heard the lie, but somebody forged one of our signatures
on an affidavit. It's like a pay or quit affidavit or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On an affidavit. And they gave 24 hours notice, period. So I was like, I have a baby.
Yeah. In Las Vegas, that was the policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, we have a baby. We need an extension. And they're like, well, the best we can offer and do is 12 more hours.
Yeah.
From the issued time.
Yeah.
Which gave us basically just until the next day at, 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
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 And so
Great
we're
people.
just like, you know what? Let's figure it out. We pack up everything that we can into the smallest U-Haul truck, because that's what we could afford.
Yeah.
And we took everything over to a storage unit and packed everything up. But there were things that were still in the house that we couldn't get into the storage unit. We got like one of those little closet storage units, and that was everything that we could pack. So I remember sitting in the empty house, and you call your mom, and you're telling her the situation and everything. And I remember her saying that she wants to talk to me. And I took the phone out into the garage, empty garage, and I'm in there, and basically I am about to turn 30. I have done a just piss poor job of taking care of my family. This is the second house that we're losing due to, well, you guys know what what it was all due to. And I had to swallow my pride and ask her if we could move back in with her. And her husband, who is not your dad, and who has 2 adult children who live in that house already. And I think just having that phone call, spiraled me in. And they drove out and they picked us up. And I remember you, me, and Brooklyn sitting in the back seat of their Toyota Tacoma, and the 2 of them sitting in the front. And Chris insisted on driving 55 miles an hour everywhere he went, even through the desert where the speed limit was, 75 or whatever. And it was the longest, quietest, no words were exchanged on the entire drive back experience I had had to that point. And when we got to your mom's house, it was like I was crushed. I was absolutely crushed. Yeah. So let's lighten up the mood a little bit and talk some more with Maureen. What do you say?
Excellent.
Let's do that.
Excellent.
Hey, I'm sure we got played. We got played. We got duped. Outsmarted by the least. Oh, it stung deep. Look at us moving. We had to two-step back to fam and to offense. Swindle neath our feet. Oh, the scam, it's so sour. Landlord played us slick, counting down the final hour. Now we're jamming, packing up groove, got a groove. Heading to mama's, ain't got nothing left to prove. Yeah, we're bound that shuffle back to matriarchs. Embrace, but we'll keep the beat alive. Find a new place.
When 2020 came, I always just said, well, I ended up with 6 kids, 4 chickens, and a dog. And to be locked down with people, these were the best people in the world for me to hang out with. And we had so much fun.
It was a very difficult time for a lot of people, and I know a lot of people that were locked down with people that were not the best people for them to be locked down with. So
yes,
yeah, that's very fortunate.
Yes, yeah.
In an unfortunate situation.
When there was this thing that came out that you could see of the things that were so non-essential, and music was like at the bottom of the second column. So we weren't allowed to, you cannot sing, not allowed to, because you will, you'll speak too moistly was one of the phrases that one of our important people in this country had said, people speaking moistly.
I imagine that went over like a fart in church.
Oh, did it ever? Yeah. People were just like, Anyway, and I did do, my musicians and I, there was a program, I think it was they might have been out of Texas or Arizona, and it was called Jam Kazam. And they were able to shorten the latency so you could actually perform in real time.
Oh, that's cool.
It was very cool. And like I think we'd already been, into this like 4 or 5 months. And the first day, earphones on, microphone, and I'm hearing, Carl and Joy Smith is one of the bass players, my favorite bass player to hire, and to hear them, and then just to me sing, it was like, oh my gosh, is that ever healing to the soul? At the end of 2020, I think I was allowed to go back to teaching, and so I did do that. And I could perform in empty restaurants, but they would live stream it. So again, that was a way of making some money, because I don't have, like when you're an independent musician, there's no, you don't have any, you can't say, hey, government, I'm unemployed now. Could I have you give me some unemployment? Because I'm not paying into any.
What did you get paid from your last job? That it's like, well, well, if you want to get specific, I made $100 an hour at my last job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
can you prove that to us? You're like, well, no.
Yeah.
I don't have a T4 that can say officially that it was.
Yeah. I mean,
So I didn't. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, is that when things started to move in the direction of like what was it about that whole situation that made you start focusing on having having your chickens in your garden and growing food?
Right. Yeah. So the chickens came because one of my dear friends, she got chickens, sent me a picture, and I said, oh, I would love to have chickens. I said, but I have no place in my yard. And her husband said, no, we can make a space for Maureen to get chickens. So it was just that thing of like, well, you're at home anyway, why not get some chickens, right? I hadn't quite stepped into that urban lifestyle, but the toilet paper fiasco thing that was going on, that craziness. That
people were drawing blood over it. It was
prices
crazy.
are still just as high.
Yeah. And then you got greedflation happening that has just like kept it up there. Yeah. We can charge. They're like the people that made the toilet paper. They're like, we can charge this much
3 times.
We've always thought that we could, but we never had a reason to try it.
They want to be the only ones that charge this price.
Yeah. But I just stood back at that, granted, and you guys are the same. You have a big family. It's not unheard of for me to buy 2 big packs of toilet paper, because there's a lot of people I had 6 kids now, my daughter and her husband. So it was like I moved from 5 to 6 children, or kidults, as I like to call them.
Kidults.
But I just was kind of like blink, like, why are people going after toilet paper? If I was panicked about something, I'd be going after water. I'd be going after lentils. I'd be going after other, foods that would have, be shelf sustainable. I wouldn't be, because you go, if you run out of toilet paper, there is a myriad of things you can use in place of toilet paper.
Totally.
But big things of bottled water, if you don't have good, clean water, that's game over for you. If you don't have food. Yeah. And so that kind of led me into this thing of like, I don't know what's going to take place in this world. I don't know what's the future is going to bring. And I do, having all these people that belong to me, I need to be thinking about, sustainability, shelf stable, and growing, because I was not a grower. I was a jazz diva. That's what I did. I wasn't, I didn't like the bugs. I didn't like the, dirt. I had the, the acrylic nails and all that sort of thing. I like to look at my flowers in my garden, but I was not one that wanted to tend to it. And we would go out and have a few adult beverages, sun tanning, and then I'd be like, I'm going to go weed over here. And then once you grow something and you go and you eat it and you're like, I have grown cauliflower.
I invented food.
It's magic.
Exactly. Yeah. And I, when we're at the table and it's like, everything on your plates are things that I grew, except for the chicken. I didn't grow the chicken, but I grew all those vegetables. What do you think? What do you think?
Right.
I grew that as they're taking a bite. I grew that.
Yeah. You have to try this. Try it.
Try it.
Exactly.
We're at the same point right now with sourdough bread, and really like a lot of Carrie's questions, you were the one that answered, and about the starter.
Give me hope.
So check this out. We every time we had gotten starter, we had killed it, right? And just the twice. It was the 2 times, or we thought we did, until she had a conversation with you.
Right.
Huh?
Yeah, I thought I killed it.
Yeah, and then we're like, why does this smell like vodka? Like, this smells very boozy.
This is bad.
Yeah, this has got to be bad. And so anyway, she has a conversation with you, and she brings this starter back to life. And she's like, oh my gosh. So she starts making a loaf of bread. And the first one was like, okay, that's good. The second one was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And the third one was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So we started making bread, or she started making bread every day. Right. But she started running out of starter.
Right.
So then she'd have, instead of discarding any of it, she'd be like, well, I brought that other one back to life. I'll just take this discard, put it in here, feed it, and bring it back to life. All of a sudden, we have 4 quarts of starter on the sink. And I mean, we'll walk into the kitchen and you hear, right? And the caps are tight on these things, and they just want to live. They just want to expand. So yesterday we did what? We did a huge loaf of.
Oh, I did a double
of honey sourdough. So lots of honey, like 100 grams of honey
I
in it.
know half of it.
It is so good.
huge.
It's unbelievable. But we also were going to make more of our signature honey sriracha garlic sourdough bread. And so we made a double batch of that. And then we're like, let's turn that into pretzels. And so we made pretzels with it.
Oh.
And then she made bagels. And now there's 3 big old glass bowls on the front out there. The honey sriracha garlic bread, like re-proofed to a point where it's real. It'll be really fluffy and like super yummy.
Nice.
But there's blueberry sourdough bread out there,
Yeah.
and then also
For cinnamon rolls.
Yeah, you made dough for cinnamon rolls for in the morning. So, like, once you get into doing some of this stuff, whether it's putting your fingers in the dirt and getting dirty in the dirt with the bugs and the worms and stuff, or you get your hands dirty in the flour with the sourdough and you get your fingers in there with all the microbiology that's living in there. And then she watched the show on Netflix called Cooked.
Yeah.
Right. And like started to understand the science behind it and why so many people today are allergic to gluten and, all of this other stuff.
Exactly.
And it all started making sense.
Yeah. One thing, Carrie, is that once it's puffed up and it's filled up here, take it, hit it on the counter, it'll start to deflate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't know exactly that, but I know like when I open it, I was like, I'm not going to open it until I'm ready to use it because it's just going to volcano.
Yeah.
So because I was like, if it's under pressure, it'll, bubble faster, which I should have not closed it. But so I open it and it's just all, doing its thing. And my son, I'm like, come here. He's like, wow.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you like pop some out, you'll see it drop.
Yeah. Or if you just bang it, it'll start to deflate some of it. It will, if you put the lid back on, it will come back up, but give it a couple of taps. And I just I do bread because tomorrow's sourdough Saturday. So I'll be selling bread tomorrow, but I take out my sourdough, make the bread with the stuff that's left in it. I'm looking at what I took out to make the bread. I'm looking at that as my discard. So then I feed this, let it sit for the day, bang it down, put the lid on it, stick it in the fridge till next week.
Nice.
So that's my method.
That's awesome.
Very
doing
cool.
it.
Yeah, I've got now 4 in the fridge. So I was like, I've got plenty now.
Oh, we also made crackers out of straight sourdough starter with everything bagel seasoning on them.
And some cheese.
Oh God.
Did you put did you make yours with butter?
Yeah, butter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. So it's just the butter, the salt. I can't remember if there's something else. And sourdough crackers are fantastic. And when you do have that much starter, you can, it's like, well, it's time to make some sourdough pancakes or waffles.
Yeah.
Or cookies.
She's going to make pasta. Like there's
tortillas.
Yeah. And tortillas.
Yes. That would be very cool.
It's really amazing. And I feel like our jubilance for sourdough bread has completely hijacked this conversation. With everything we've talked about today, would you have done anything differently?
I would have stepped sooner.
Interesting.
I would have stepped into this life a whole lot sooner.
Yeah.
What I know now, what I live now, I would have. I wouldn't have just put my big toe in and just inched it in little by little. I would have jumped sooner, much sooner.
Well, Maureen, that was absolutely awesome. I am so glad that we took the time to sit down and just like find out more about you. I really enjoed myself.
I did too. Yeah. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for this
so
opportunity. It's, you two are two of my favorite people in the homesteading community. And so, the fact that I was asked.
We were like, you have to be the first one that comes on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
I feel very blessed about that.
Yeah. Well, I hope that people will go and check out your YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. You probably have a MySpace.
I had 4 MySpaces, I'm sure.
You know what? You would have been in my top 8, Maureen.
Oh,
You'd have been one of my top 8. That's for sure.
Oh my goodness.
Right next to Tom, Carrie, Maureen, and then, you know,
Yeah.
the other random people that I didn't set the other 4, you know?
Right.
So, well, that was absolutely spectacular. I'm so glad that you came on. Is there any place else people can check you out? Or are those are the ones?
Yeah, or it's like you can find everything about me on maureenwashington.ca. There's a landing page, and you can either go and check out my music, or you can check out my my urban homestead life and that. And I do have like a YouTube channel for my music channel as well.
Awesome.
What's that
So
called?
you can find everything. You write in Maureen Washington, jazz singer or urban homesteader, and you will find all things of Maureen on the interwebs.
Someday the search results will pale in comparison to when you search for Diva in the Dirt. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you around.
Woke up to his 30s with a heavy mind. City buzz ain't sweet, it's the bitter kind. Feels his heartbeat rushing in double time. Gotta break the mold, hit rewind. In the mirror, sees a young boy aged. Time to flip the script, jump off the stage.
Man, she was awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm super glad that we got to interview her, and she has a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm proud to call myself her friend. Or,
A friend of the Diva.
Yeah.
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 Yay. So we're back at your mom's house. Describe that for me.
I don't, at the time I remember just kind of being happy that there was a park nearby that we could like go to, walk Brooklyn around, she could play. And I don't know, I didn't mind it terribly. It was not the ideal thing for us or for them.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, we're gonna figure things out and we'll do that.
Yeah, and I'm super glad that you stayed as positive as you stayed during that time, because I was spiraling. I was like, at this point, you know, it was only a couple months later that I turned 30, and it was just like, I failed. I didn't hit either of my targets. And I had not thought that far into the future, considering that either one of the things that I thought that would happen by the time I was 30 didn't happen. I really hadn't thought much into that, but I knew I had an amazing wife, had a little baby daughter, so I started doing electrical work with an old friend of mine, you know, and but I was not doing well. Mm-hmm. The kids were not okay. And so we ended up having this experience where I'm sitting in the room watching something with Brooklyn. I hear from the kitchen somebody hollering at you, and I'm just like, what the heck? So I get up, and it's your mom's husband, and he's like yelling at you about not rinsing out the milk jugs before you put them in the recycling bin, or something to that effect.
Yeah, that was the...
Yeah, and he's like full on hollering at you like you're a little kid, right? Like, we have rules in this house and blah, blah, blah. I walked in and kind of like separated you two, and I was like, listen, we'll try to do better to follow the rules of the house, but if you ever talk to my wife like that again, I will lay you out. And he just kind of like grumbled and walked away. And I remember, this is after we were there probably, between 3 and 5 months, somewhere
Sounds about right.
around there. And the next day, your mom came in and was like, hey, so I think one of our friends has an apartment that you can rent. Which, you know, in hindsight, was probably not serendipitous. It was probably something that was talked about after that I'm going to lay you out conversation. Mm-hmm. So we went over and looked at this little apartment. It was on the other side of the tracks.
Yeah.
In the skids, as they say. Not such a good area, but we went ahead and moved into this little condo. Mm-hmm. And it was...
a little 2-bedroom place. And on either side of our place, which was, our place in its totality, and then on either side of my daughter's bedroom window and our bedroom window were...
front doors
of other people's houses, as well as on top.
Yeah.
And there were just...
tons of them.
Hundreds of them, yeah.
Yeah, and so it wasn't but a couple months later that we found out that you were pregnant with our second daughter. And so we're just like, oh my gosh, we got to do something. So I remember, like, you had picked up the hobby about 6 months into the pregnancy. You'd picked up the hobby of looking at Zillow for houses, and we kind of had these conversations and said, hey, we actually did find the most prosperity that we had developed for our lives in Vegas. We had contacts, different business people that we could deal with, and we thought maybe we could find a house to buy in Las Vegas. This whole time, my soul was just like draining out of my big toe. I'm doing terribly by this point.
Like visibly green.
Yeah, I wasn't making it, and life was not looking good for me. I was constantly in conflicts and things with different people. You're looking at houses, and we're trying to say, like, maybe we can do something, because the economy hadn't recovered out there. So you could buy a 3-bedroom house in a cul-de-sac for like $65,000. Yeah. And
whereas compared to where we were, people bought the exact same house next to us.
The condo,
for $350,000.
Yeah.
Little tiny 2-bedroom, 700 square feet.
It was unbelievable.
Little nothing.
You were like very pregnant, and the neighbor that was right on our bedroom window had this thing that he would do. He'd like wake up at 2:00 in the morning. He'd slam his security door, the big steel security door, and he'd just start singing mariachi music at the top of his lungs, right outside of our window. It'd wake you up every night.
Yeah, they'd blast music, leave their screen door open, parties, and they'd stand and talk right at our bedroom window.
Yeah, and
which is their front porch.
It was like,
wham!
Yeah. So that was happening, and it was driving us kind of crazy. You were very pregnant, stressed out. It was not a good situation. And then Seattle arrives, and she's also born at home, and with a different midwife who was the first person I'd ever bartered anything with, like a big barter, which, became a big thing for us later. But I did a bunch of, drywall and stuff at her place, and she did our midwifery with Seattle. And what was funny was we had a pool set up for when Seattle was born.
The thing was massive,
it was
by the way.
Big old...
I think that was part of why I ended up not having her in it, I think it was like this weird primal instinctual thing where it's like I kind of wanted this cozy little area like our first thing was, and it was like 10 feet.
Yeah, it was this massive thing. It filled up the entire front room.
Entire living. We had to move the coffee table and chairs. And
yeah. You were walking around with my mom, because my mom came over and was helping. You were walking around the park, and then you came back in, and you're like, I have to go to the bathroom. You went to the bathroom, you got up, and you're like, I think the baby's coming. And I just remember getting my arms under your arms and then kind of guiding you over to the bed and then onto the bed, and
then she came.
And then she started coming.
Yeah.
So, and that was right about when the midwife got there.
Yeah.
Right. Beautiful. The whole thing was amazing, and I was like having this crisis on one side. I was spiraling downward, but now it's like we have this new little baby, and I wasn't going to make the same mistake that I made before. and go and play a poker tournament the day after. We stayed there and we were working together with the babies. Brooklyn was super hard at that time. She was going through her terrible twos, and she was a brilliant child. Her first word being seed pod. That was her first word. We'd go on a walk and she'd point them out. But she was very, very strong-willed. And so I remember at the time everybody was into Ferberizing. You just let them cry. And that kid could cry for like an infinite amount of time until she got her way. And then finally after like 2 or 3 hours, we'd just be like, okay, come out. And then she'd go straight for under the desk and start pulling out the wires of the computer. And that was just like, it was intense. But one night, and I remember this pretty clearly, we had gotten Brooklyn to bed, relatively good early time. Seattle had gone to bed at a pretty reasonable time, and we're like, oh my gosh, we may possibly be able to get some sleep tonight. And it was still early. I think it was like 8 o'clock, so we laid down, and right as I'm dozing off to sleep, you fell asleep. That door next door. Clash. And it would shake our windows. It was such a huge noise. And I had enough. I was over it. I'm done. No more. And I get up and I go to the kitchen. I grab a can of WD-40 because I'm going to at least handle the squeaking of the opening, right? And I walk over, and the guy's standing there. He's singing at the top of his lungs. And I walk past him with the can of WD-40, and I just start spraying his door with it, with the hinges, right? And he's like, oh, what are you doing? He like pushes me out, and his adult son comes out, and he starts like pushing me and trying to pick a fight with me. I don't want to get into a conflict, but I'm totally willing at this point to just throw hands because I'm so tired of their stupid security door and their song choices to sing at the top of their lungs right outside of our windows when we're finally getting some sleep is so ridiculous,
Like 12 and 1 and 2 and sometimes 3 a.m.
Yeah, just
not like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Which it was 8 o'clock at night that time, right? And, yeah, it was like, because it was just barely getting dark. And so we're going at this, and apparently somebody called the police, and 8 cop cars show up. And so we separate from each other. I go over to into the house, and I'm going to have an interaction with the police officer. I'm going to turn on my camera, right? So I go in and I get the little flip camera that had the lanyard, put it around my neck, press record, and I'm just like, the cops come up and I'm just like, hey, I'm sorry this is happening. It's an egregious misuse of your time. And he's like, don't worry about it. This is Simi Valley. We don't have that much to do, and we get paid by the hour. And I got that on video. And I was like, excuse me for a second after you just said that. Turned it over, pressed stop, and I was like, go on. And he's like, got that? You recorded that? Like, and I was like, yeah. And I'm pretty sure that's the only reason that I didn't go to jail. And the like supervisor, I think he was a sergeant or a lieutenant, I'm not sure, comes up and he's like hollering at me about, this is how terrible things happen, and let me just get these 2 little friends out of your hair there. This is how terrible things happen. And he's like yelling at me about this whole thing, and I'm trying to explain to him what's been going on. And it doesn't matter. You can't just spray somebody's door with WD-40. I'm like, it fixes almost everything, right? And I'm trying to be funny with him and everything else, but I knew like if something didn't change almost immediately, I was either going to go to prison. So now it's like, okay, I didn't make it to being a millionaire by the time I was 30. And I didn't end up in the dirt. And it's looking a lot like if something doesn't change, what I am going to end up is in prison. And that could not fly. That would not be a good outcome. What do you think? Would you have been okay with that at the time? You're like, just take him.
You know, all I have to say is it is really good that we had the time that we did together before kids. So I really got to see you at your best.
Yeah.
Had I not seen that and we were just suddenly faced in this situation, I'd have been like, whoa, boy, did I make a big mistake?
Yeah.
Because this
Peace
guy
out.
this guy is like chasing not being with us.
Yeah.
And but it was still really confusing, and I was like, okay, we have to do something different, otherwise you are just gonna pick a fight with the wrong person or try to defend someone, and it's just gonna be, like you're gonna land yourself up in jail. Like,
Yeah.
that was just what I was feeling. You weren't doing well. Like, it was just trying to tune out as much as you possibly could to just have some semblance of peace that you could, somehow get. It's about where I was at there.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're a great guy, and I know I've seen that guy, and I don't know where he went, but the situation
He ain't here no more.
isn't helping, and we gotta, get out of this situation so that guy that I married, I can be with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're starting to look at houses more intensely.
Yeah,
We got to do something different. And at least you weren't like this when we were in Vegas. Let's see what we can find. And when you were looking for houses in Vegas, what'd you come across?
Yeah, I was looking out there. Housing prices, of course, were way better, and I came across some land, and I was like, who is this Billy Land? I need to, is this a scammy thing? What is this site about? I checked their Better Business Bureau record. I found every review I could on every site it was available, and I was like, okay, well, this seems legit. And I found some different property listings, and I was like, I looked at all of that stuff before I even mentioned it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want there to be an agreement on this hopeful thing without me knowing, is this for real? So I looked at that. I looked at all of these different properties, and then I was like, all right, look at this. Look, there's land. We could totally afford it, and we could do it now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is great, because then I remember you being like, yeah, we could totally do that. I was like, you think we could build our own house? Oh, yeah, no problem.
And this is before it was all trendy to do, and
there weren't even homesteading videos on YouTube yet.
Yeah,
they
hardly.
Didn't
yeah.
If there were, who knows?
Off
what it
Grid
was
with Doug
under.
and Stacy. That was it.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had never even heard of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was like, this could get us out of this situation.
And
Both
some
of us in a better
space between
place.
us and neighbors.
There wouldn't be any neighbors.
Yeah.
This would be.
Yeah.
This would be ideal, and there was.
I'm amazed, considering where you're at this point, that you were like, yeah, let's move to the woods.
It's because I knew I liked you.
Yeah.
I liked that person that I had met and spent so much time with. It was only the few years, which fortunately teetered, that I knew this good guy for so much longer than
Yeah.
where you were just in a rut.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that. And I knew that guy was there.
Yeah.
So I just figured if we could remove, all of these external elements that were certainly contributing to the situation you were feeling and experiencing in life, then perhaps this would help.
Yeah.
And
I was just thinking, I've screwed up the last few years so much that, and this is where my husband math came in, right? Where I was just like, I'm never going to find a person who that I'd rather spend my life with. You're super intelligent, you're super talented, and you're so much better looking than me that I was like, yeah, whatever you want to do, let's do this. And, those things sound superficial, but it was really like, you're like the best person I can imagine. And so, yeah, I was like, yeah, if that's what you want to do, we can make that happen. I'm sure I have all the skills necessary to make that happen. And
Now, were you super confident, or were you just pretending to be very confident about it?
I think it was probably 50-50.
Okay.
I knew I was smart enough to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how much I didn't know.
Sure.
And so that was probably where that part came in, but yeah, I mean, as many people who have heard this story before, we had negative $27 in the bank account. We just paid all our bills and everything. And we're like, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to come up with $300. So we had a yard sale, like the next day, we had that yard sale. We made the money that we needed, but just barely enough. So we went and got a prepaid Visa debit card, and we put the money down on the property. Somebody called us almost immediately. We did a bunch of paperwork, and that was Crystalline, and she congratulated us on being landowners, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So we started having more garage sales and putting stuff up on Craigslist.
Basically around that time, we're just like, why are we still here?
Yeah.
Like, should we just, because we had the first yard sale and we're like, hey.
Yeah. I don't want to pay for both of these places.
Yeah.
And
We're
utilities
like, why don't
and
we
everything
just go?
else. And
What
yeah.
are we waiting for?
And we thought to ourselves, well, we needed some kind of shelter. So we had some more yard sales and sold off an old car that we had at that time and made just enough money to find the one travel trailer on Craigslist that was about 2.5 hours away, that was within the like $2,200 that we had to spend on that. So and we drove down with the SUV and picked up this travel trailer, brought it back, started cleaning it up. We found out later it wasn't even waterproof because when we got here, it rained a lot. And after selling basically everything that we didn't need, 34 days after we had that first yard sale and put the money down on the property, we arrived here. Mm-hmm. And so that answers the question of what kind of experiences a person must have gone through to arrive at the philosophy that we've arrived at, in the lifestyle that we've found, that we have just found to just absolutely love. And it has been amazing for us, for the kids. Now there's 5 of them running around, jumping off of rocks and climbing trees and stuff. And it was a very important for me, not at the beginning, which we'll get into on another podcast, but it allowed me to kind of come full circle, and I feel more like the myself that you met at that door.
Oh, for sure.
Than I probably ever was. I think I've actually grown into being that guy that you thought you saw, who, and I'm very proud of myself for that. But I'm also very grateful to you for sticking it out with me through that period of time. It was horrible. And I know now
I'm also impressed with myself.
Let's just take a second.
I think, not to downplay your compliment, because it's very sweet of you.
Yeah.
I've just convinced, was then and am still to this day, that I want to be happy
Yeah.
in the situation, and in any situation, I am choosing how it is I want to feel about how things are, and I choose I'm gonna be happy, and I'll bring as many who are wanting with me, including you.
Oh, well, thanks. I can't honestly say there was like a true intention to be happy during that time for me. You know,
I could see that.
Yeah, I'd basically given up, and that's why my goal now, when I'm making videos and talking to people on our lives and everything else, is to talk to those people who have struggled and who have given up and who can't see a way forward to attain a lifestyle that where they will be happy. That's why I'm communicating to them, is because that's where I was, right? And man, it was a long, circuitous, not going from point A to point B road that got me here. But we arrived, you know? And so here's the big question. Knowing what you know about the end of the story, or like where we're at now, right? Would you have taken the chance that it didn't end up here by changing anything if you could have?
I mean, maybe a few things that we didn't mention in here, but
Yeah. I probably know which ones those are, but maybe not. Maybe I don't have the self-awareness to have considered it, but
that's funny. I mean, that's a great question. I want to say certainly not. They would brought us here.
I'm
But,
actually very certain that,
Maybe it wouldn't. It probably. In fact, yeah.
yeah,
It would definitely have changed us coming here, because if there really wasn't such a seemingly dire outcome if we didn't change, why would we have changed?
yeah,
It wasn't like we both grew up in the country and longed for that life back.
yeah,
It was never in our purview
yeah.
of experiences. And so perhaps not. Yeah.
So that answers the question of how I always like to tell the story like we saw the land, we decided, we had some yard sales, and we left. And 34 days later, we arrived on our property. If you want to start, just start, right? If you want to do it, just take the first step. And whatever it is that you want. But the reality is that us arriving here in that 34 days was years in the making.
Yeah.
We just didn't know it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And those experiences, as hard as they were to make it through, and as difficult as the day-to-day existence was, and I know it was hard for you, it was also very hard for me, because I knew what I was capable of, but not being able to even peek out above the mud to be able to do something about it. It was one of the more soul-crushing things that I experienced in my life. And I've had a few of those. So, comparative, right? And so I'm glad that I'm actually, from where we're at now, glad that we had the experiences that we did, because I think there's a certain amount, one, it ended us up here, but there's also a certain amount of certainty that going through those kind of experiences brings to a person. in what they're capable of, what they're able to make it through, and what the person that they're spending their life and going on this adventure with can make it through as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's, something to be said for, like, demanding of yourself a change.
Yeah.
And until that point occurs, whether it's you just really want something because it's like a dream, and then there's all of those things that really, like, demand that you have to do something different, or that continual line is just gonna get you,
Yeah.
Into the ground, or
Yeah. Literally.
literally,
Yeah.
or whatever.
So, if you had the question at the beginning of the podcast of how something like this happens, that's how. And so I just really want to thank Carrie for going through this story. It's not something we like to revisit. I don't know if you could tell. There were times where I think she wanted to either pull her own hair out or at least yank on mine. So
There was actually, I was like, oh, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do that. I'm sure if you watched this, you were probably like, what is going on?
yeah, why is her face like that?
Yeah. Nope. And and those were just the highlights.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other little minutia
Yeah.
that were just,
Yeah.
So.
But I'm glad we're here now.
And I'm glad we can move on.
Yeah.
I'm done with this story.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be archived in the podcast.
Can we not talk about this again, please,
Hey,
guys? I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah. Let's comply
the story,
with her on that,
I'm
huh?
just like, hey.
Yeah. You know what's up, right? So anyway, I'd also like to thank Maureen Washington, Diva in the
Yes.
Dirt, international jazz singer, 9-album haver, including 2 Christmas albums that she still sells downloads in July.
I know, awesome sourdough bread maker.
Yeah.
Chicken mama. And
Urban homesteader.
gardener. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Also mother of 5 kids. We have a lot of common ground,
I know.
And so I'd just like to thank her for coming on the podcast as well.
Yeah, it was
And I
super
hope you
fun.
guys enjoyed it. On the next one, we're going to get into the actual homesteading story and how that all came to be, which honestly, I think is like the redemption story arc of the trilogy of these 3. And then I don't even know what we're going to talk about after that. But
Well, there's plenty more. I mean, that we're still in we're 2011 now. Is about where we ended off.
Yeah.
2012. That's
2012.
That's when we arrived.
Yeah, right at the end of the Mayan calendar,
Yeah.
And when we found out the end of the world wasn't coming then, we had to write a new story for ourselves. And we
That's
did
funny.
that. So I hope you'll join us for that next week or the following one, whenever we decide to make the next one. Thank you guys for hanging out.
Yeah.
And,
Have a good one.
And we'll talk to you later. Yeah. Come here.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I put up with so much.
Well, I'm just appreciate that you've made it easy for me every day of our relationship for the last 18 years.
Remember that every day.
Laughing life lessons, a treasure trove. Grooving to
All right,
the
let's go play with the
stories,
kids.
from the young to the old at sTEaD Talks, where the roots and the music flow. Come on down to our homestead. We got stories, we got bread, yeah. 7 kin and tales to sow. sTEaD Talks, where the good vibes grow. Listen to us, oh, we've got a rhythm we're playing. city folks, tune in. Barefoot jams on the wooden floor. Family band, we've got the funk galore. Turn up the bass, let the spirit soar. Living it up at sTEaD Talk, so who could ask for more? In the heart of the land, with the kin you adore. sTEaD Talk's vibing, it's the funk at the core.